and toes, knees and toes. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, and eyes and mouth and nose. Head, shoulders, knees and toes.
You already get your eyes and teeth checked. Why leave out your ears? They're just as important. So if you've noticed a change in your hearing recently, come and test it for free at Boots. One free hearing check per year. Over 18s only.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation. With Ask Boris. Mayor of London Boris Johnson takes your calls. With Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. This is Ask Boris on LBC.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. This is Boris Johnson bringing you your latest edition of Ask Boris on LBC. I'm here for the next 45 minutes taking your calls with my trusty helpmeet, Mr. Nick Ferrari. Your chance to put any question you like to me within reason, and I will do my best to answer. Nick always being as helpful as he generally is. The numbers for you to get your questions on the air, 0345 6060 973. Don't forget, you can also, if you're absolutely fanatical, watch Ask Boris on the website, lbc.co.uk. Let's go straight to our first call, and it's Kiru in Warrington.
Hello.
Hello,
Good
morning, sir.
Good morning, sir. Yeah, it's about Google's tax payment.
Google.
I heard the news. Yeah, when I heard the news on the radio, LBC, that they paid only about 130, and last 10 years back payment.
Yeah.
And I was in shock because I'm an accountant practicing in Surrey, Wellington.
Wallington. I'm so sorry. You're in Wallington.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we got Wallington. That's right. It's in London, man.
Yes,
here, Kieran. Come on. The reach of LBC is everywhere.
Well, it is a national station.
Of course, it is.
So, Kiru in Wallington, you're an accountant,
and
what we need to do is, what do you think of the tax take for the tax payment from Google?
Well, okay. There's Nick Ferrari leaping in to seize the reins from Kiru, but I think Kiru is on the right lines. The whole problem there is that you've got these big American tech corporations that do huge amounts of business, billions of pounds worth of business in the UK. We all love them. We all use them. We all use their apps. We use Google. We use Apple gizmos of one kind or another. We use that. We shop on Amazon. And what is not fair, in my view, is that these businesses are paying tax at what is evidently a much lower rate than some of the small, medium-sized businesses in London, in Wallington, for instance, on the high street, wherever, that are facing very fierce competition and sometimes going under. So it needs to be sorted out. I don't, myself, find it easy to... You can't just blame the businesses. These aren't charities, Kiru. They're corporations that have finance directors whose fiduciary duty is to minimise the tax exposure of their company. They will just obey the tax code of whichever company they're in, and they will move around like predators in search of the best tax deal they can find around the world.
Exactly. I mean, as accountants, we also do that. But the problem here is, it's difficulty is, when I read the figures, what they make, around $25 billion sales around that 10-year period. I mean, if you translate that profit into about, say, 7-8 million, 30% or whatever they make. And then, if you translate that into a corporation tax, which is about, say, average 25% over the 10 years, they should have paid...
You're quite right. Yeah, look, I mean, you're right.
Was it a good deal, Mr. Mayor?
Look, we need to get more money out of these people.
So it wasn't a good deal?
In my view, we need to get more money out of these people. I've said what I've said about this, and I've been extensively and abundantly quoted on this point. I don't care. I think, look, we need to get more money out of these people. The difficulty is, actually, it's a conceptual point. If you imagine, British Aerospace or GlaxoSmithKline or another big British company, suppose they're selling... I don't know, machine guns or whatever British Aerospace makes, or some.
GlaxoSmithKline are selling machine guns.
British Aerospace are selling some sort of weaponry. Or GlaxoSmithKline, less controversial. GlaxoSmithKline are selling some wonder drug in Latin America. Okay.
Right.
and they are making huge profits in Latin America on that drug that is made in this country from a company that's incorporated here. They don't actually pay corporation tax in Latin America, and there is a. Do you see what I mean? So Google can rightly say, well, we are based in Luxembourg or wherever it is, and that is that's the way the rules allow us to be. I think that we do need, because these companies play such a huge part in our lives, they're having in many ways a very, very a big impact on competition on the high street in the UK economy. They should be paying more in taxes on their profits in this country, and that is something for Parliament and for the HMRC to devise. And I hope very much that we'll come up with such a system. And I know that the Chancellor is working on that.
Kiru, enjoy Wallington. We move on. Mr. Mayor, where are we going now?
We're going now to Michael in Lambeth. Michael.
Hi.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
What's your question,
Here
Michael?
we are.
Sorry?
What's your question, Michael? Go ahead with your question.
Oh, right. Sorry, I wanted to ask about the Garden Bridge. I heard about your trip to San Francisco.
Yes, come on.
To try and raise money for the Garden Bridge.
Yes, come on, Michael.
Which I think is admirable. You're trying to raise money and save from the public purse. The only problem was that
we failed.
That project didn't exist at the point you went off to San Francisco, and in fact, a couple of weeks after that, you pretended to start a competitive process to find a designer for a bridge. Why did you do that?
No, of course the project existed. We wanted to raise money for a garden bridge. We hadn't, Michael, as yet procured the designer or indeed the architects for the garden bridge. We hadn't gone ahead with that process, but clearly it would not have been sensible to proceed with a very large infrastructure project in the centre of London, which would attract controversy from people who don't necessarily wish it well. I'm not saying you're in that category, but there are people who don't necessarily wish it well and who wish to attack it. We had to get as much private funding as we possibly could. So I thought it was quite a good idea to see if we could get it extensively sponsored, and that particular effort did not come off, but other efforts have, and I think that, to the best of my knowledge, the Garden Bridge Trust has raised so far about £85 million, and they have more to come.
I think you've bypassed the question I was asking. I totally agree with you. As I said, it's admirable that you're trying to get money for the Garden Bridge, but that project had not been procured, as you yourself said.
Yes.
10 days after you flew to San Francisco and you met Mr. Heatherwick, you then went through a competitive process where you invited various parties.
Yes, but as I said, I understand your point. But perhaps I can clear it up by saying that we had to try to raise funding for this, but at any stage in the procurement process, if another of the bidders had done better on any of the relevant criteria than Heatherwick in producing the right answer, producing the right scheme for London, I would have been perfectly content to go with that. I think there were other people in the frame. I think Marks Barfield, the people who did the London Eye, there were other people who could easily have done the project. What I was trying to do was to raise money for it.
So why was Thomas Heatherwick there?
Correct.
Because it was a concept that he had come up with, but many people come up with concepts that they do not ultimately deliver. I mean, the Dartford Crossing, I think, was proposed by Balfour Beatty.
It was a concept he'd come up with, but you hadn't even issued papers to bring in the bids by then.
No, but I mean, for instance,
so how come he got such preferential treatment?
He didn't.
The fact that he's sitting down with potential sponsors and other rivals that are bidding for it are not made aware of, invited to that meeting.
Of course they were. They were invited.
That's not preferential treatment.
Well, hang on. All the sponsors were being invited to do was pay for it.
What would you define it?
All the sponsors were being invited to do was pay for it.
No. Having Mr. Heatherwick there.
Well, I think the suggestion that is being made is that there was not a proper procurement process, but there was, because as we went through exhaustively several times now, TfL procured the Garden Bridge. They went out to tender. They evaluated several contenders on the basis of the offers that they made.
This trip you took to San Francisco, was it public or private trip?
This was a trip that we made because we were given to understand, and perhaps I was over-optimistic, that the corporation concerned, viz. Apple, were very keen to sponsor the Garden Bridge. As it turned out...
But you initially said that this was a private trip, didn't you?
No.
You've never said this was a private trip?
No, I think I've said it was a private trip, no.
Right. And you'd met Mr. Heatherwick a few days before the trip?
Yes, Heatherwick, as you know...
Why?
because the idea for the garden bridge was proposed by Thomas.
You were a
Heatherwick.
journalist of considerable note at one point in your career.
Yeah.
Do you not think this starts to smell?
No.
You meet a man prior to
Let me give you an example.
to which the other people are not even aware or invited.
Yeah, that doesn't make any difference.
And then, lo and behold, 10 days later, suddenly the process. You don't think this smells?
No, because after all, the potential sponsors would have sponsored the garden bridge, whoever had gone forward to design it or build it. And as I said, as it happened, they didn't come up with any dosh, which was a bit of a shame. But we were right.
How many bridges has Mr. Heatherwick designed?
Well, that was a question for the.
Sorry, let's bring Michael of Lambeth.
That was a question. That was a question for the procurement process. I think there's a lot of people in the architect's world who basically don't like the idea of Thomas Heatherwick
No, I think
doing
what they
a garden
don't like
bridge.
is the possibility of inside. I'm not saying there is, but the possibility of some kind of inside deal.
What inside deal?
In that one
Come off it, mate.
architect meets with the mayor 2 or 3 days.
It was his idea.
2 or 3 days prior to a meeting where, oh my God, suddenly he pops up at the other side of the country, the other side of the world in San Francisco.
Let me give you an example.
Extraordinary.
No, it's a load of
Michael.
This is a load of Let me give you an example.
Could I come in, Boris?
No,
Boris?
let me just give you an example.
I'll make sure you do come in, Michael.
Let me just give you an example.
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
The Dartford Crossing, which we now have, was proposed, and the original design was put forward by, I think it was Balfour Beatty. It was then eventually delivered by a completely different company because they went through a procurement process, and the original proponents of that bridge did not succeed in getting the tender. We had to, if we were going to get the garden bridge built, we had to find substantial sums of private sponsorship. It was essential. This is totally moronic. This is totally moronic. We had to explain to potential sponsors what this structure might, and I stress might, look like. So, Michael, it was essential to get Thomas Heatherwick to give a vague idea to our potential sponsors of what the thing could be. And that in no way prejudiced the eventual outcome of the competitive tender
Let's get Michael back.
procedure.
He started this. Michael.
The problem you have is that your own auditor, who sits on your board, the TfL board, to advise you, has stated publicly that the procurement was neither fair nor transparent.
No, he hasn't.
You also completely ignored the legal advice your officers gave you in January, prior to the meeting in San Francisco and prior to the competitive process, purported competitive process. The legal advice from your officers was to hold a proper competition. You didn't do that. You invited 3 competitors, one of which was Mr. Heatherwick. You let a tiny contract of £60,000 to Heatherwick, which got the whole thing under the radar. This ultimately is an £8.5 million contract. £8.5 million of public money has gone into this design. And that's what you've been bypassing through this.
No, we haven't.
Let's hear a final point from Michael. Mr. Mayor. Michael, go ahead. Michael, your point.
My last point, you kept your own TfL board in the dark. You were the chair, but you didn't report anything to them until 6 months after your San Francisco trip.
The San Francisco trip, Michael, as you know full well, did not yield any dosh. This whole interrogation is this whole line of inquiry is totally pointless. The Garden Bridge is ringed with demented enemies who do not want to see something beautiful established in the centre of London.
Because they came and complained to us. One of your own TfL board actually came and complained to us.
Well, so you say.
They have not been informed about this.
Okay, well, so you say.
That's how serious this is.
Well, indeed. Look, I mean, I've tried to explain to the best of my ability, Michael, what happened. And what we tried to do was to raise substantial sums in private sponsorship for the Garden Bridge. That bid did not pay off. Subsequent bids have paid off. But there was absolutely no connection between that effort and the eventual procurement process. And if you look at the procurement process, and the London Assembly, we've been over this many, many times. You look at the procurement process, no fault has been found with it. In the end, there were 3 bids, I think, and the Heatherwick Studios bid came out on top. And that seems
Which is another surprise, because initially their design was going to cost £173,000 to deliver. That was compared to one of just under £50,000 by Wilkinson Eyre, £15,000 by Marks Barfield, a company you've just mentioned. It has been cut to £60,000. It's still £10,000 more than the closest bid from someone who's only ever designed one bridge before.
Look,
but no favouritism here.
No. As I said in the London Assembly.
It's a man who found himself in San Francisco.
As I said in the London
Assembly.
but look, we had to, but that was because we were trying to raise money for the concept of a garden bridge. We didn't have, there was nothing. We weren't going to put, we're going to put 150 million
when the
of
TfL
public money
documents
into
went out, how was the bridge described?
Well, I can't remember, but I suppose it was
it's
described as
a
a
footbridge across the Thames.
Right.
Not the sort of glittering, extraordinary sight
well,
that we might end up
but you
with.
know, Marks Barfield and Wilkinson Eyre are very, very talented designers. They had ample opportunity to use their imaginations and come up with something that would fit the bill. And as I said in the London Assembly, I would have been, frankly, perfectly happy with any studio that had won. I wouldn't have minded at all. What we wanted was the best design. What we also wanted was to minimise exposure to the taxpayer. Now, if you follow the argument of people like Michael, who from Lambeth, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't even try to go and raise money from Apple. You wouldn't try to get 85 million. In fact, all you do is sit on your arse and achieve nothing. And I think actually the achievement of the team who've backed the Garden Bridge Trust in raising the cash that they have.
But we're still going to be 30
very,
million
very
of our money,
substantial.
isn't it? Caroline Pigeon has tabled a motion, I believe, hasn't she, in the London Assembly?
Well, it's perfectly true that
She wants to withdraw the 30. She could one day be mayor, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Caroline is standing. It is perfectly true that
30 million pounds short of funding.
we have put some TfL money into it, and indeed the Chancellor has
Joanna
put,
Lumley, who
has
wants
put
this
money
damn
into.
bridge?
Actually, about 85% of Londoners want it, according to the polls
In
we've
that
had.
site?
On that site, and will be superb for the city. And by the way, can I just tell Michael and everybody who's listening, this thing doesn't just become an asset for the middle of London, creating a new park on the river. What it does is it links up Waterloo and that whole Covent Garden, Aldwych area. So people coming out of Waterloo Station will no longer have to flog over that miserable, through the wind and the rain, down that rather narrow pavement across the bridge. They will have the opportunity to go across the Garden Bridge to a redesigned, reconfigured Aldwych site where we're going to change the one-way system and to make it a nicer place.
Costs of this?
The running costs, as I've said, will be.
No, what are they? How much?
I can't give you that off the top of my
I'll
head.
tell you,
But they are not
£3.5
being
million
met. They are not being met by the taxpayer. It is important that those will be met by the Garden Bridge Trust, and they have agreed to that.
But they'll be underwritten by the taxpayer, won't they?
They are going to be met by the Garden Bridge Trust.
Yeah, but they'll be underwritten by the taxpayer, won't they?
Well, as I've said,
there's people in South East London crying out for a bridge.
I know. Well, they are actually. Nick, well, last time I was on your show. We talked about the 13 river crossings that we're building.
The one that's going to happen is something that Joanna Lumley's after, and it's not absolutely fabulous for everybody. It might be for you and her.
It is. It will be. Actually, that's not true. It will be wonderful for everybody. Right. And I just think there's a sort of huge cloud of negativity that surrounds anybody who tries to do something beautiful in this way. It is perfectly true that we tried to raise money off Apple, but at that stage, the thing was it was basically just
Michael,
a drawing.
We must move on, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much
for that bridge.
Where
do we go now, sir?
Let's go to David in Amberley.
Right, hi.
Good morning.
First of all, I'd like to say that I was absolutely overjoyed when you got into as the Mayor of London and ousted Ted Livingstone. But now I have no time for you whatsoever. I have no idea what planet you're on.
Right. Okay.
I want to know why it
Come on.
took a friend of mine 2 hours to get from Canary Wharf to Park Lane last week. He left
I can tell
Canary
you.
Wharf at 10:15,
Yeah.
and he got to Park Lane at 12:15. The bloody superhighway was causing the problems.
Here.
Well, listen.
Hang on,
yes,
haven't
please.
finished here.
Sorry.
I want to know why he then had to pay the £11.50 congestion charge when you are doing nothing but causing congestion.
Well, David,
Why have you not suspended that charge for the duration of the works? Because the traffic is a nightmare, and you, after all of this, are leaving in 2 months' time.
Well,
how fair is that, and what gave you the right to do it?
Well, I'll tell you, David, the right we had to. I mean, first point to make is I do apologise to you and to your friend for the traffic and the delays that you're experiencing. That is temporary. It will steadily get better. The cycle superhighways, as you rightly say, have caused a great deal of congestion. And believe me, the anger that you have just vented upon me is nothing compared to the spleen that I get every day in the House of Commons from my friends in government who are stuck in their cars when they wish.
What do you say to them?
And I apologise, because I apologise profusely, but I do think it's the right thing for the city.
Why did it all have to be done so quickly?
Well, it doesn't. It's being done actually at a reasonable pace, but in the end, you have to do these
Why
things.
didn't you do on the side? It's true you didn't do the side roads, isn't it? Because you couldn't get them from the local authority. That's why you could only do the transport for London roads. That's why it's the main. Some of them, the cycle superhighways. The cycle superhighways will go sometimes on borough roads and sometimes on most boroughs
TfL
wouldn't let
roads.
you have their roads, so that's why you've taken out the TfL roads.
I don't think that in the end. I think in the end, Londoners will look on this as a great step forward for the city. I know it's painful and I know it's difficult. And I appreciate that people are very angry. On David's point about the congestion charge and waiving the congestion charge. I'll look at that. I don't know what our rules say about whether you can waive the congestion charge in view of congestion that is actively caused by.
So you might consider
TfL. I will look at that. I cannot because I think it may be difficult to determine exactly who is. It may be difficult to determine who is a victim, as it were, of TfL generated congestion and who isn't.
But if there was a way to determine that, you would be interested.
If there was a way to determine that, I would be interested in looking at that. But David, I can tell you that I can tell you're not a believer in the cycle superhighways. I am. I think they're the right thing for the city. And many a time I've sat here with Mr. Ferrari discussing the deaths of people on bicycles who have been, particularly young women, who've been crushed by lorries, by cars. I think anything we can do.
Where are we with mandating cyclists to use?
Anything we can do to make cycling safer, we should do.
Where are we with mandating?
And can I just finish? One of the successes we've had over the last few months is actually the number of deaths and serious injuries from cycling is well down, and I mean to keep it that way, and I mean to keep it going that way.
At about 2 miles an hour.
No, that's not. That's not the case.
Average journey. Do you know what the average speed of a cantering horse is? 10 miles an hour. Do you know what the average journey time across London is at the moment?
Well, we are, as I say, going through a particularly acute period of congestion caused by the cycle superhighways. It's not. By the way, sometimes
8.3.
Well,
So you do better to have a horse. Now, yesterday I had to travel from.
We did. The people did used to have horses, and it wasn't much good.
No, but I had to travel from these studios to London Bridge. It took me 50 minutes.
Well, how did you get there? Why is it necessary?
Because I choose to be driven in a car. I was going to an office that was open to you by you, great fanfare a few years ago.
Very grand person.
That's a speed of just under 2 miles an hour.
You're a very grand person, but
under 2 miles an hour, Mr. Mayor. This is a disgrace.
Well, you could always elect to go by this thing called public transport.
If I want to. Sorry, have I woken up in a Soviet state that I have to take?
No, but what I'm saying to you is I'm just giving you a bit of friendly advice, which is that I
don't want friendly advice. I want roads that move. I want roads that move.
I'm just saying that. Yes, of course.
Do you agree with this idea of pay-as-you-go that's floated in the Evening Standard last night?
Pay-as-you-go for what?
By London First. So that effectively there would be extra congestion. Actually, spoke to Richard Dilks, Transport Programme Director from London First.
My question to the Mayor is his view on the current congestion charge and whether a more sophisticated one could cut congestion for London.
So almost like pay-as-you-go on certain key roads.
Well, I think the difficulty with putting up the congestion charge, I don't know quite what Richard is proposing. The difficulty about whacking it up more and more is that there are some people, unlike Mr. Ferrari, who could very well go on his bike, frankly, and would be good for him all round. But there are some people who definitely do need to use their vans, their cars, and I am reluctant. I know, and I apologise to all those who are listening because they want to see the colour of my insides because of the cycle superhighways. They will be better. They will. Once they are in, they will be absolutely fantastic. Anyway, we'll look at Richard's idea. We'll go to Ella in Sutton.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. My name
Ella, how are you?
Ella. I'm very well, thank you. My question is that Sadiq Khan has pledged to freeze fares for 4 years.
Yeah.
He says it will cost £450 million, but TfL say that it will cost $2 billion. What's the truth?
Well, the truth is it will cost $2 billion over the business plan to 2020, and that would be a very sizable chunk, Ella, to take out of TfL's budget. £2 billion, that is what we need to do big stuff like, never mind blooming cycle superhighways. We need to do the bank upgrade. We need to put in the subsurface signalling. £2 billion is a mortal wound to TfL. It makes it very difficult for us to deliver crucial infrastructure that is essential to keep London moving. And I know that Nick Ferrari doesn't want to go on public transport. Many people in this city need it, value it,
I'm quite happy to, but I like to take the car as well.
It's the lifeblood of the city, and £2 billion would be an absolutely disastrous policy. And while we're on the subject of the Labour candidate for mayor, it seems to me that he's missing a trick now in failing to condemn the forthcoming RMT strike on the closure of the ticket offices. I mean, I can't think of anything more pointless than this strike that is advertised to go ahead on Sunday. We will do our level best, folks, to keep London moving, and we very much hope to do so. But what is the point? The ticket offices are being closed. They have been closed, and they will be reassigned for other more valuable purposes. They're being reassigned for, for coffee shops or click and collect places or whatever. And that is the future. What are you snorting at click and collect stuff, Nick?
I think a lot of people quite like having a member of staff rather than having to buy a cup of coffee.
They will, hang on, they will.
Sorry, I know, the staff are out.
Hang on,
Yes,
there's this thing.
Can
I just see, there's this thing called the Underground. We built this amazing system.
No, I use it.
Okay, good.
I use it.
Good.
I wish I'd used it yesterday. I was on one of your damned roads. We have another call.
Come on, Johnny in Brixton.
Good morning. Calm down, Mr. Mayor. You seem to be insulting people as usual, calling the great Londoners demented because they don't like the idea of your garden bridge. But moving swiftly on.
Well, I didn't say that all Londoners would demented. Come on, that's a little bit of it.
You called people that disagreed with the thing somehow demented.
Well,
but anyway, we'll move on.
All right.
Regarding the hourly minute gridlock, most Londoners except yourself endure. Could you please, for Londoners and of course the hard press, as you keep boring us with the iconic London cab trade, which I'm a taxi driver.
Right, I won't then. Okay, all right, okay. You don't want me to talk about the iconic London cab trade?
No, let's hear what Johnny's question is to you.
Can I get a word in, please?
Go ahead, Johnny.
I know it's your show and all the rest.
Your question, Johnny.
Please, a simple question. What is the number of those glorified minicabs that you're going to say enough is enough because we're letting out 300 or 400 every week? Can you tell London? You're
right. Well, Johnny,
is it 300 a week?
Well, there's a huge number coming on. The figures I've got off the top of my head are that the number of minicabs has gone up from, I think, about 54,000 to about 95,000.
300 a week? Well, no wonder there's so much congestion.
Well, thank you. That is one of the factors.
But we talked about this 2 months ago.
Well, what
have you done since then?
Well, as you may have seen, we launched a
not a consultative document
package
please.
Of measures,
just want to be sick.
including.
Never mind package of measures. Why don't you do what Brighton does and just say that's it? We've reached the number.
Well, Brighton actually
over.
does that for black cabs.
Okay, well, I don't care what. There must be a way.
Well, I don't know whether Johnny would like to see that for black cabs.
No, there must be a way of restricting the number.
Johnny, would you like to see restrictions on the number of black cabs?
We'll ask Johnny. Why don't you just restrict the number of private hires?
Because we need primary legislation to do that.
And who have you spoken with at the government?
I've spoken to absolutely everybody in government about it.
So what does the Prime Minister say about the idea?
They are reluctant to do so.
Why?
Because they basically consider it to be an anti-free market measure. And I don't agree. But
what about what it's doing to the
black
cab trade?
What we are trying to do is bring in a congestion charge for minicabs, so that minicabs coming into the congestion charge zone will have to pay a congestion charge. We're also
so those stickers in their windscreen will be pointless. They won't get free license to drive in and out of London.
They will obviously they will be identifying themselves as minicabs, and so that's the point of the stickers. But they will be regulated by TfL, but they will pay a congestion charge.
Full whack.
And yes, and that's what we're consulting on.
Let's see an instant response from a taxi driver, Johnny.
No. Most of them drive Priuses, aren't they exempt?
No, they're not, as you know. No, Priuses are not exempt.
Mr. Mayor, can I please speak? Please.
Yes. Go on.
This is beyond the pale. You give this, I tried my best. It's not good enough.
Right.
300 extra vehicles every week. And you say your friends in Parliament go, a free market. This isn't a free market. This is just destroying one industry for cheap labour. Because those same drivers, by the way, they're not earning anything like what they were told. And most of them, would you believe it, and you can get the facts on this, they're on benefits because of it. So how is that a free market?
Well, what is certainly true is that the company that we're talking about, which is Uber, do not, in my view, pay enough tax. But that takes us back to the the first point that we were discussing. Right. But I think, Johnny, you would accept that there are many people who are listening to this conversation between you and me who actually might not be able to afford black cabs and who think that Uber provides a pretty useful service.
I can hear Johnny.
How about that, Johnny? That's why I don't want to make you explode.
In a sentence, Johnny, because I've got news to get to.
Go on, Johnny.
He's doing the classic move the goalpost. He won't answer the questions. And
what
you mentioned cheapness. It's nothing to do with cheapness, sir. I could bore you as much as you bore London this morning with your sort of on-message answers. It's utter nonsense what you're coming out with.
So would you like to get rid of Uber altogether?
It's nothing to do with... How many times are you going to mention that company?
All right.
It's nothing to do with them.
He just wants the prime. Right. We must move on. Coming up after... Johnny, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Coming up after the news, Mayor Johnson declares war on old boilers. Details follows this. The news on LBC.
Hillary Clinton's campaigners say she's won the Democratic Party nomination for US President in the Iowa vote, beating Bernie Sanders by only around 0.5%. Donald Trump lost out to Ted Cruz on the Republican side. The Mayor of London's told LBC he is prepared to look into waiving the congestion charge for people caught up in traffic caused by building the cycle superhighway in London. Boris Johnson claims it would be difficult to implement, though. He also says he can't understand why members of the RMT union are preparing to strike on the London Underground in a row over ticket office closures.
They will be reassigned for other more valuable purposes. They're being reassigned for coffee shops or click and collect places or whatever. And that is the future.
A British man has been trampled to death by an elephant in front of his teenage stepdaughter in Thailand. The 36-year-old, who's thought to be from Scotland, was killed by the animal while on a trek on the island of Koh Samui. Downing Street says the Prime Minister's secured a red card system to block unwanted EU laws. It's part of the draft reforms agreed during talks with Brussels on renegotiating our relationship. A short time ago, the FTSE was down 75 points at 59.84. LBC weather, windy and cloudy with patchy rain for London and the southeast, turning fine and dry this afternoon, highs of 11 degrees. Very windy again, particularly in Scotland, where it will also be cloudy and wet. Sunny spells and showers for much of England and Wales, the rain mainly to the west. Northern Ireland, breezy, bright but chilly. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Eleanor Noakes.
Whether you're a butcher, baker, bar owner, onesie tailor, mechanic, optician, cat groomer, bespoke dog suit maker, exotic fruit seller, jeweller or landscape gardener, employers across the UK, however small your business, will soon have to offer a workplace pension, even if you employ just one person. Don't ignore the workplace pension. It's the law. To find out what you need to do, when to do it, and for help through the steps, visit workplacepensions.gov.uk. This ad is brought to you by the Pensions Regulator, a public authority set up by the UK government to regulate work-based pensions.
Work it! And step it out. Let's do this. Come on, guys. Get ready to feel that burn. Come on. Overslept and not quite ready? No need to rush. Just take it steady. So pow, wow, now. Work it out. That's right. Don't put on a tie and boots. Work from home in your birthday suit. So pow, wow, now. And breathe. Let it all hang out.
Here's to flexible working. Conference calling by Powwow Now.
If you're looking to promote your brand, then you need to think emoji. Emojis are becoming one of the most powerful tools in bringing your brand closer to the consumer. Next time you use or see an emoji, think that could be carrying my brand. Branded emojis are easily within your reach at emojimybrands.com. We offer a complete service and have been behind some of the world's most successful campaigns. Think emojimybrands.com. Find out more at emojimybrands.com.
I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils.
Yes, because they're collecting for Marie Curie's Great Daffodil Appeal, silly.
Oh.
Here you are. Get behind the daffodil this March. Give just 2 hours of your time to collect for Marie Curie. You'll be helping our nurses care for more people living with a terminal illness. Search Marie Curie and sign up to collect.
Yeah! I'm a rootin' tootin' builder. Actually, my name is Colin, and I've been building great quality houses for 20 years. But when people see my mobile number in adverts, they start thinking I'm a cowboy. Woo-hoo!
Your phone number says a lot about you, even when it's not accurate. With eReceptionist, you'll get a real UK landline number, which routes calls to whatever number you want to use, so that you can be as mobile as your business, all from just 30 pence a day. So y'all mosey on over to ereceptionist.co.uk and take a free 30-day image-improving trial today.
Based on a year's subscription, free trial must be cancelled to avoid charges.
Landlords. Direct Line guaranteed to beat any quote for the same cover. Can your landlord insurance do that? Search Direct Line Landlord. New customers only. Qualifying criteria apply. Underwritten by UK Insurance Limited.
This is Ask Boris on LBC.
And let's do some Ask Boris through emails, texts and tweets.
Do you think the listeners have been torrid enough already? You want to bowl your own question at me?
Well, I've got one myself, but I'm going to do some from emails and the texts and tweets as I indicated there, Vera. First, Rachel in Bexley. Is it right the Prime Minister considering sending his son to a private school? He is ultimately in charge of all state schools.
I make absolutely no comment on people's decisions about their kids.
No
free. Comment.
He's free to send the lad.
It's just I don't think it's a matter for me.
Ryan in Chelmsford, who says he's a serving police officer. It's been reported Met Police Commissioner Sir Bernard Hogan has been given a 12-month extension. Why not longer?
Well, because there's a couple of reasons. Basically, I think I'm a massive fan of Bernard Hogan, and I think he's done a great job of bringing crime down in our city. It's down almost getting on for 19-20% now since 2012. A lot of really serious neighbourhood crimes like burglary are well down. These are tough things to do, and I think he deserves. His term comes up in September. The difficulty is that the new mayor, whoever he or she may be, would not have a long enough time, we think, to get to know Sir Bernard, to work out how things are with him, before having to make a decision in just a couple of months.
But
really,
it was reported last year he was going to get a 3-year extension.
Well, that certainly didn't come from.
So that was never mooted. No, it was always going to.
So it was always a
12
question of being fair to the next incumbent of City Hall, but also being fair to Sir Bernard. And I hope very much that people will see that he's doing a great job.
How much has the VIP abuse inquiry damaged his standing?
The
VIP.
All that. Look, I think this is one of those things. This is one of those things where the police are really damned if they do and damned if they don't. If you think about it, it's not so very long ago that we were all talking about Greville Janner and Jimmy Savile and these people who have been exposed as not having been the kind of people we thought they were. If the police don't follow the leads that they are given, then they will be very, very heavily criticised.
22 officers visiting Lord Bramwell's home.
When it
What
comes
do they think
to
he was? Al-Qaeda?
When it comes to particular cases, particular individuals, such as Lord Bramwell, as I've said before, I think poor Lord Bramwell certainly deserves an apology.
Well, why don't you tell Bernard Hogan how to give him an apology?
Because I think what the police have tried to do is show some general
but he's a friend, isn't he? Bernard is a friend of yours.
Well, let's be clear. He is the commissioner of the metropolis, and he does a very good job. What I think, let me just go back a bit. The whole that particular operation, which is I think Operation Midland, has a whole string of investigations following the testimony of one particular individual,
the fantasist known as Nick.
Now, well, that's what he's now called. Of course, the media might have described him rather differently if they, if they thought there was anything.
If my granny had wheels, she'd be a bus. Where does that end?
Well, but I think I've just given you the answer to that, which is that it wasn't so long ago that people you would never dreamed of being child abusers turned out to be.
But when
just
you get
that.
it wrong,
and
it's
when
good
you
to
get
apologise.
When you get it wrong,
I'm asking you, because he is a friend of yours, why don't you just call him as a friend and say, Bernard, just issue an apology?
I think that is a matter for him and a matter for the Met. And there is a general problem, which is that people will ask, why should the Met issue an apology to one particular?
His wife went to her grave.
Can I just but one particular individual when there may be all sorts of people who are arraigned for all sorts of charges which turn out to be equally fallacious, and they don't get an apology. The Met does not systematically apologise. Now, it may be, as you say, that there are particular circumstances in the case of Lord Bramwell which do merit an apology. I think that's something that Sir Bernard is considering, but in the context of the overall results of the the Midland inquiry. I think that's where.
Before we go back to the calls, my one question: can I ask you
Yeah.
how excited are you by what we understand the Prime Minister has achieved in his conversations with Donald Tusk, and does that mean we can say that you're definitely going to be voting to stay within Europe?
I am unfortunately not able to give you a full readout because I haven't yet been able to absorb the full quivering magnitude.
You're aware of the red card idea.
Look, I'll look at it.
Well, how do you understand the red card to work?
Well, we'll have to see how it is explained to us. I haven't yet, got, as I say, a firm view on it. I have my doubts. The
idea is the red card. We had to have it work. We have to have 55% of other nations agree with us to actually implement a red card on any policy.
Well,
how likely is that? If we can't get Engelbert Humperdinck to win the Eurovision Song Contest, how on earth do we think we're ever going to get Europe to agree with us?
Look, I think what would be better would be if we had a break of our own that we were willing to use, and that we were more willing to say, look, Britain's an independent sovereign country and we don't agree with this particular piece of legislation or regulation and we want to stop it. And that's what we should be able to do. But so I will look at the...
so you're not enthused by what Mr Cameron's achieved?
No, look, I think that David Cameron has done a very good job of negotiating at a huge speed a very difficult package of measures,
which aren't worth anything.
What I think everybody who
a break you can't apply.
Everybody would want is to see more progress, and let's see where we get. I think that so far he has been doing a very, very good job of getting people to see things his way. I think there is much, much more, however, that needs to be done. Can we go to David in Kingston?
Hi, is that Boris?
Yeah, how are you?
Very well indeed.
Good.
Boris, Sadiq Khan has promised to force developers to make 50% of housing affordable. But I also remember Ken Livingstone making that same promise.
Well,
is this a practical measure?
It's total nonsense, and what it will do is make it impossible for developers to go ahead with some of the projects that they should be doing. As you know, we have a large amount of brownfield space in London that needs to be got underway. If you put a 50% target on it, then developers simply won't be able to do it. The economics won't stack up. And on the other hand, what will happen, David, is that in places like Kingston, places like in outer London, across the leafy suburbs of the city, they will be obliged to use mayoral powers to call in projects and plonk great big high-rise structures high enough to get the value for the developers to deliver the affordable quotient, if you see what I mean. And that is not the way we should be proceeding in London. Yes, we can build homes, but I do not want to see a return of a Labour mayoralty that would ride roughshod over the interests of outer London and plonk and cover the landscape with high-rise developments of the kind that Ken Livingstone was trying to do when he left office.
A quick response from you, David? David, I think we've lost David as a call. Never mind. I'll just have a ring myself. Pippa's in Wandsworth. Pippa, you're through to the mayor. Go ahead, Pippa.
Pippa Crerar.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
No, we're about to find out.
I just want to say,
No.
Sadiq Khan has said he could save millions from TfL by cutting agency workers, cancelling route master buses and shutting down the cable car. Why haven't you made these savings?
Well, because they don't add up to a row of beans. And indeed, just on the cable car, Pippa, which is the most extraordinary thing, the cable car is actually the only bit of transport infrastructure. And I tell you who, the cable car is the only bit of transport infrastructure that actually makes a profit, both on its, and it's going to cover both its capital and its revenue costs. Now, if the idea that you can somehow staunch a £2 billion wound in TfL's budget by closing the cable car, when that would actually cost even more money, I mean, that is deranged. It is deranged. It is totally mad. And, the cable car last year actually made a profit of £1 million, or has stored up a surplus of £1 million. So the way to do this is to be fair with Londoners and to stick with the programme that you've set out. And I always said that I would be reasonable about fares. I would try to bear down on them, but we would not lurch around. And what the Labour candidate is proposing is a return to lurching around. Ken Livingstone promised to freeze fares. He then massively whacked them up. He would have done so again had he been re-elected. And that is not the way to do it. The way to do it is to keep a steady and reasonable fares policy.
Question from me: do you think Donald Trump, the wheels have come off a little bit with the views last night that he came second in the primary in Iowa, the caucus in Iowa?
Well, look, I mean, Iowa is a particular case in a particular state, but I think if this shows that the whole kind of Trump mania is starting to fizzle, I won't personally be totally devastated. I think he's obviously an engaging guy, and he says what he thinks and all that kind of stuff. However, I did not like it when he said that he wanted to slam the doors of America to Muslims, and there are I have to say that is not my kind of politics. And
what of the phenomena that is Bernie Sanders?
Well,
neck and neck with Hillary Clinton as we speak.
Yeah. I never met Bernie Sanders. I know nothing.
Is there a touch
really
of the
about
Corbyns here, the sort of anti-establishment figure?
Well, except the interesting thing is that in the Republican race, it seems to be reverting to,
Yes.
Rubio is in the game.
Yeah, he is.
And I think he's a very serious candidate. And it's very, very. I think it'll be very interesting to watch.
Why are you declaring war on old boilers?
We're not declaring war on old boilers. We are offering Londoners a fantastic cashback scheme. We are now open for applications of £400 to help homeowners and landlords replace their old boilers with new high energy efficient models. And we're putting millions of pounds into this. Get onto our website, folks. If you've got an old boiler, www.london.gov.uk/boilers.
How much does a new boiler cost?
The oodles. More than
so you're giving 400 quid on
more than £400. It's about a new boiler will cost roughly 2,300, we think.
Wow!
But this is a substantial. This is a substantial
so you're
bung, folks.
So
and
you're
boilers,
still 1,900 down.
Well, look, you don't have to do it.
No, I know. Well, why would I do it then?
Because you might want a new boiler that was more efficient, that saved you money on fuel, and you might want a boiler that was less polluting. And that's what we're trying to do. One of the big causes of bad air quality in London is nitrous oxide, much of which comes from boilers. And we think that by having a massive clean boiler campaign, we can help to get those numbers down. Don't forget, we've already got nitrous oxide down a huge amount. This is one of the ways to go further.
And you also got a gang exit programme you want to make London aware of, Mr. Mayor.
I do. And we've had a big success in getting gang crime and knife crime down over the last 8 years, but it needs to go on and it needs to go further. And we're launching a citywide programme for people who become aware of kids that they know who need to be helped out of gangs, because it is it can become a very all-embracing type of life. And there are charities that we are supporting who will deliver the service, who will reach out to those kids, try and put them on the right path, get them into jobs, into apprenticeships, get them mentoring schemes. Only Connect is one of the charities. Red Thread is another. We're not reinventing the wheel, but we are putting more effort now, not just into the enforcement side of the anti-gang strategy, but into the support of young people as well.
Lastly, how fair was the Prime Minister's attack on Oxbridge on the weekend for being too white?
Did he attack Oxbridge? I didn't. Did he attack Oxbridge?
He said that there was more should be done, and that more black students should go.
Well, let me put it. The great thing is, let me put it my way. I tend not to blame Oxbridge. Okay, I don't think it's the fault of universities. Universities admit on the basis of academic performance the people that they think are going to do best at their university. That's what they've got to do, and they're totally right to do that. What we need to, so I wouldn't blame Oxbridge at all. What we need to do is make sure, and going back to what I was just saying about the gang exit strategy, we need to make sure that kids growing up in our cities have the opportunity to get there, and that their schools are turning them around and turning them into Oxbridge candidates. And it is happening. What we should be doing, in my view, is talking up the incredible successes that we are now seeing in some of these London schools. I mean, look at that school in Stratford that is now getting as many people into Oxbridge as any fee-paying school. Fantastic. And that's a function of London teachers a culture of excellence and ambition in London schools. And that's something we've really tried to foster in City Hall with the Schools Excellent Fund, with the all the stuff that we've done to bring together London teachers and help to motivate excellence in London schools.
I know you have to go. Last comment. Nicky Morgan has said the Conservative leadership contest should not be fought by two white men. This is, of course, as David Cameron talks about problems of diversity in race. Is she right?
Well, I think that thankfully we have a very good Conservative leader, a superb leader at the moment, and thank goodness there is unlikely to be any change in those arrangements for a long time to come.
Yes. What I would probably say, says Nicky Morgan, is I think it would be a big mistake if when we get to it, the two people the party offers up as potential candidates are white men. I've said it before. I think it should be great to have a woman there. It could be me. It might be somebody else. She goes on.
Look, I think
he's talking about there not being enough black people at the university. You have a look around his cabinet table, Mr. Mayor.
Well, look,
Pardon?
But the point
What earth does that sound mean?
The point I want to make is that there is a huge range of talent.
If he looks around his own cabinet table.
Yeah. But the great thing is that there is no vacancy.
Did it occur to him?
There is no vacancy for that function. Unlike, for instance, at university, where there are vacancies every year, and what we have is the opportunity to get our schools better.
But shouldn't he be setting a good example last year, the Prime Minister? He should be promoting more non-white people.
Well, I actually, as far as I can remember, my feeling is, by the way, that the Conservative Party in Parliament now has higher representation from black and minority ethnic groups than the Labour Party.
But not looking around the cabinet table.
Well, there's off the top of my head, I couldn't. Actually, that's not true. I think there are several people from black and minority ethnic. But then, what we're talking about, what people want to see is promotion on the basis of merit and ambition and what they can offer the country.
All right, get yourself that 400 quid off a boiler. Mr. Mayor, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming here for Ask Boris.
Thank you very much. And don't forget the TfL's brilliant takeover of the suburban rail services, which I don't think you've yet covered on your show, and I forgot to mention.
Go ahead, in a sentence.
It's just the biggest thing that's happened in the last few weeks, Nick, is that there has been a
land grab?
No, not a land grab. We are going to be working with the Department of Transport now to deliver better services for all suburban rail users in London. And the crucial thing is that it will not disadvantage people outside London, and will be great news for them too.
You've been listening to Ask Boris on LBC.
5, 6, 5, 6, 7, 8. Escape the office to your favourite spot. Coffee's smooth, the waiter's well hot. We've all